everyone, and welcome to this episode of my interview series. Today, I'm really happy to have Mette Knudsen here. She's the CEO of Knudsen&CRC, a consulting firm based in Shanghai and focused on helping foreign brands with product registration and regulatory compliance for the China market. Mette has been following the animal testing changes very closely, to say the least. Like, she's really been at the forefront of this for many years. So I'm very happy to have her here to discuss this in more detail in regards to the changes that have happened since the 1st of May. So Mette, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Ellie, for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
So as I sort of said before we started this, I think most of my audience have a general understanding of the fact that animal testing has, for non-special use cosmetics, there's been these major changes that started off from the 1st of May. But there's a lot of unknowns around this and a lot of questions for brands. So you're going through this already with many brands. What are the main difficulties that you are finding through this process? I mean, one, for example, the GMP certification, maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah. As you say, in the new CSR, the new regulatory framework for cosmetics in China, the most thrilling or exciting part was, of course, that it was the end of mandatory animal tests for regular cosmetics, as they call it now. And so we have special cosmetics and then we have regular cosmetics. And for regular cosmetics, it was possible now to bypass a animal test for the first time ever for imported cosmetics, which was
yay,
amazing. Yeah, amazing. First step in the right direction. First step. But it was really, really great. But obviously, it doesn't come for free in the sense that there are a lot of additional requirements. So it's not just the GMP certificate, but also a number of other requirements. The GMP certificate is a requirement that the Chinese government have already had in place in China. So for Chinese produced cosmetics, they already were required to show proof of a GMP certificate in order to avoid animal tests as part of the product registration. So they have had this trial period since 2015, and now it's actually open to imported cosmetics as well. And essentially, it's like this, that this GMP certificate is not something that is normally very complicated to get. It's an ISO 22716 certificate, and that's actually what many cosmetic manufacturers already have. The big difference here in China is that they actually require the government to sign off on these GMP certificates. And of course, that has caused some countries a lot of headaches, because this is not normally a field where the government is involved. And to sign off on a GMP certificate is definitely beyond the scope of most governments. So many governments had actually to set up a whole new mechanism in order to enable this GMP certificate. I know from UK, they have a whole new mechanism under the trade international trade division in UK, and the same in France. I know that Spain has been a relatively easy process, as far as I understand, in Spain, because it was already under the kind of government. It was possible to do that already. So some countries, it has been a huge work, and for other countries, a rather minor, mechanism to put in place. And I think Europe has been quite far in that process already. I mean, most of the countries here had that certificate in place of the manufacturing. But back to that, for the new law, it's the GMP certificate that is definitely the biggest barrier that has come as a precondition to bypass these animal tests. And I think secondly, it's also important to note that there are other things that can trigger animal tests. It's not only the GMP certificate, but it's also the efficacy claims on the products. Because the problem is, it's only regular cosmetics that can bypass animal tests. Special cosmetics still need animal tests. So therefore, it's really, really important for the brands to keep that in mind, that if they come with a claim like skin whitening, for example, they go directly into a special use cosmetic or sunscreen products and so forth. But also for new ingredients, because in the new law, we also have the opening for new ingredient registrations. But cruelty-free brands just need to keep in mind that when they register new ingredients, they're actually triggering animal tests as well. So it's important to keep that in mind, that it's not only the GMP certificate, it's actually a number of other conditions that has to be compliant with the new law in order to avoid this testing, unnecessary testing.
Okay. So all new ingredients are, the process for that does involve animal testing.
Yeah. So it's the first step, when we have a new client, the first thing we do is actually to provide an ingredient screening, and we do it free of charge. I think many other agents also do that free of charge, because obviously we all know that, for example, many brands, they have this hero ingredient that are special, that they're using in their product specifically, right? And if that product, if that ingredient is not approved, and they're going to apply for a new ingredient approval, then this will actually trigger animal tests. So it's vital to screen your products first, and then for some brands, it's a no-go. I mean, they won't be able to enter the market. That's just how it is. Yeah.
Yes. So as I say to many brands, cross-border e-commerce still has a place, and of course, as we've talked about before, there are other routes to the market through
definitely
manufacture, local manufacture.
I think there's one thing you should keep in mind, because there's no doubt that even for cross-border e-commerce, we will see new requirements as well. We recommend cross-border as a kind of a first step to the market. Like, it's a good tasting of the market, but we just know that there will also be stricter regulations for cosmetics sold on cross-border e-commerce, but that will most likely come into effect in the new year, because right now all the focus is on registration of cosmetics. But so we recommend still that brands try out cross-border as a first step.
Yes, I mean, even the other day we saw the banning of CBD, right? Any CBD products, and that was across cross-border. That's everywhere, right? It's completely banned. So
and we actually, it was no surprise at all. We have actually recommended our brands not to use, for example, CBD since the last 2 years, because we knew that will eventually come into effect. And I think for some brands, we can predict that there are certain ingredients, as if you can see some kind of, dispute about the safety of an ingredient internationally, the likelihood that China will ban that ingredient is quite likely.
Pretty high.
Safety is number one in China.
Of course. Yeah. And then the other thing that's been sort of a hot topic is this idea of the responsible agent. So that's something that there's a lot more, the new regulation, there's a lot more responsibility on the responsible agent, right? So how are brands navigating that?
It's a very good question, because it has given a lot of headaches, and it's for everyone. It's a new law that is applied for everyone, for domestic cosmetics as well as imported cosmetics and special cosmetics. So there's no one that are not under that requirement. And essentially, it's like this: that in Europe we have what we call a responsible person. And that responsible person had to have, the PIF files and so forth. It's almost the same, just much stricter in China. So in China, it's like this, that the responsible person is a requirement in order to register your products. And actually, it's one of the first things that the brands need to decide, because we need to input the name and address of the responsible person when we start the product registration process. So it's a vital requirement. The problem is that there are a long list of requirements to the responsible agent, and not only in regards to their roles and responsibilities. They have to report to the NMPA, they have to do the recall system, they have to implement the recall system, they have to implement a system where you can, when you, for example, are going to conduct a recall, you need to know exactly where that particular batch of product are distributed. You have to monitor all that in order to be able to make a a safe quality and safety system that is required, right? But also the the responsible person has to have a specific type of CV and experience. So it's not enough just to that they can conduct the roles, but that they also, as a person, have the qualification to conduct that role. So you can only imagine that the demand for this kind of person has definitely gone up in China afterwards. So, but I think there are ways to overcome this. So first of all, we provide that service in our entity, and I know that many other agents are also providing that. So it's definitely possible to ask someone to do it temporary, and then when the brand has a legal entity in China, that they are able to take over the responsibility.
Right.
And I think obviously because of the pandemic as well, a lot of brands has been delayed in their establishment in China, and they're not able to come to the same extent. So we also see a lot of, I would say, forgiveness from the authorities, in the sense that obviously they understand that there are certain structures that the pandemic is making it difficult for foreign brands to set up. So I think but it is a huge difficulties, and I think right now we're doing a lot of translation of the systems. So you translate the quality and management system from, for example, English or French or Spanish into Chinese, and that is also for the brands to be able to understand what they need to manage in the future, because it's the brand's responsibility, right?
Yeah, massive work, and it's good to hear that there are independent parties like yourselves that are able to do that for brands, because you know, that's a concern that we've talked about in the past, about the distributor being that responsible person, and is that, you know, you really don't want to have that, right? You want to separate that. So definitely. It's good.
It's one of one of our biggest I would say it's the advice, apart from other essential advice like trademarks and so forth, that we say, please do not appoint your distributor as your responsible agent. I think for some brands, they're thinking it could be an easy solution because the distributor is already there, blah, 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 blah. The problem is just that you give away all your most confidential information, and it's not just the ingredient list and your formulations. It's actually down to the production of your products, the production processes, and today you even have to provide the authorities, and therefore also the responsible person, with the information about all your suppliers. So
your
they
sourcing,
can it's everything. You can just give away all your secrets, and you don't do that to a distributor. I would definitely
never.
not.
No. Agree. Totally agree. Yes. Well, goodness. I'm glad brands have that other option. Yeah. And in terms of how long, like, you know, obviously it's only just started, this process, but how long you envisage it taking, you see it taking, and sort of other bumps in the road that you've already come across with the brands that you're helping?
I think as long as the brands, they actually have the documentation, and therefore I think maybe the European brands that have done the PIF files already, they may have an advantage, because the system is very much like the European system, just a little bit, I would say, stricter. But it would take approximately 6 months to do a regular cosmetic product registration of imported cosmetics. But it all depends on whether the brand is actually prepared for this. So do they have, you know, for example, efficacy claim support? Can they provide that? Have they done the testing of their efficacy claims, right? Yeah. And the safety assessment reports, do they already have that? You know, and then obviously the packaging material today, it also has to be compliant with a number of requirements. And finally, they have to register all their ingredient suppliers in the system, and that's a new requirement. It's not something we have in Europe either. So actually, what we do is we start by, in the future, we would start by registering all the ingredient suppliers in the system before we even do the product registrations, because we have to connect these two, right? So I think it will take when all the ingredients are in the system and we have all the documentation, it won't take longer than the previous registrations that was kind of 4 months, 5 months. But we say 6 months to be on the safe side. Yeah.
Sure. It's all new, right? It's all new.
Yeah.
Like with anything
We
in
don't
China,
know.
when it's new, it's not clear. It's definitely not clear yet. Yeah.
It's not at all.
No.
So, but I think we have we have a hope that actually, and I think that's very relevant for color cosmetics, for example, because color cosmetic is what we call fast fashion within cosmetics, right? And then, and time to market is extremely important. When you launch a product, you have to, a new color, nail color, or lip color, you have to be really fast with the trends, right? And therefore, time to market is very important. And I think when the new ingredient system is up and running in China, you already have the ingredients in the system and the suppliers there, it will be much faster. And I think we can get it down to maybe 4 months, 3 to 4 months.
Okay, well that's good. That's definitely good news. Yeah, exactly. Streamlining it.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yes, hopefully. And we talked briefly before this about, obviously you've said for European brands, the system, it should be fairly transferable with these extra requirements. But say for brands from the US and any, other major markets, Australia, for example, what's some of the roadblocks you're seeing for those markets?
Some countries definitely have some huge barrier ahead of them, and I think US is maybe it's kind of more terrible than ever, because previously the trade barrier that animal test was posing, apart from the cruelty aspect of it, was actually for everyone. That meant that all cruelty brands were kept out of the market, right?
Yeah.
But what happened now is that some brands get market access and other brands does not, depending on where they are produced, right? And I think that's a terrible situation, because obviously right now a lot of our US brands are kept out of the market because they do not have the GMP certificate, and they cannot enter the market until this is solved, and meanwhile their competitor can enter the market. So we do quite a lot in order to help governments and states and the lobbyists and whatever, who are stakeholders in this, and try to work together on providing them with input on how to make a mechanism that can enable the US government to sign under, this kind of certificate. Whether it's going to be a state-focused solution or it's going to be for the entire US, we don't know yet. But we definitely hope that they will find a solution, because the alternative would be either that the brands are kept out of the market, or that they're relocating their production to countries where the GMP certificate is actually available. So it's not so good. But we do everything, and we actually, I can emphasize that we do that free of charge because of our Leaping Bunny project. We also help governments free of charge. So it's part of our own CSR, and we hope that we can solve that final barrier.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So important. I mean, so many of the world's wonderful beauty brands are coming out of the US. So we
exactly.
Yeah.
And they are, especially the US brands, they have, first of all, an amazing branding in China, but you can also see on the demand that they range really high on the demand on the market, right? So it's we have to solve it somehow. And I can maybe add that if anyone would like to discuss how to solve this, they can reach out immediately, Ellie, because we want to help as much as we can to remove that barrier, right? The final
that's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. And I suppose my last question is one that may be slightly controversial. Do you think that all this is actually moving everyone towards local manufacture? Is that the ultimate goal in terms of, because it's quite a few barriers in place, right? And local manufacture has been there as an option for a while, cruelty-free option.
Yeah. It has been an amazing thing actually to see how many of our brands that has moved into local production and have had good experiences with it. But I also want to say that for flexibility reasons, I think we would see that many brands would go into the imported option, back to the imported option when it's possible for them, because you can definitely save quite a lot of money on a local production in logistics and also sourcing locally. And what has been a positive thing has been that many consumers in China does not think that made in China is a bad thing. So our fear was that that could be a problem, but it has shown to be not a problem at all. But I think the biggest thing that might move into local production, not only in China but all over the world, is actually sustainability. Critical consumer system that actually the younger consumer, they have a lot of focus on using brands that has been transported from one end of the world to the other, right? And I think therefore we would see maybe more sustainability considerations for brands, and therefore local production might not just be a cruelty-free consideration, but also a sustainable consideration to produce local. But it's everywhere in the world. I think it's not only in China.
No, that's an interesting thought, actually. Yes, definitely. The consumer demand towards sustainability forces brands to have a local production option. Yeah, but as you sort of mentioned as well, it is difficult in terms of flexibility, right?
It is,
like for brands, that complexity and
and the thing is that, as I mentioned before, time to market has become extremely important for the brands. There's just like in fashion, the turnover of new products and new efficacy claims and so forth is just going so fast, and therefore you don't have time to set up a copy of your own home production in China as well as fast as that, because it takes a longer time. So I think it will be a trade-off between time to market and then cost savings in China, and also the sustainability consumer that will put a pressure on brands to produce locally. So it's kind of a trade-off. But I think for the first few years, we will see a lot of imported cosmetics, our cruelty-free brands entering the market a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Which is good, and because there's been no competition.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's really good. I mean, I think also this point about how cross-border e-commerce is going to develop is another very interesting one, and a topic for another day. But you know, how the government's going to sort of manage all that together in the sort of real view of consumer safety, right? Like under that umbrella. But just how that affects everyone is a really interesting one.
Very interesting. So actually, you can see that the claim of cruelty-free and vegan is now on the top 10 list online. So while we were not even on the radar when we started the project in 2015, now the consumers are actually searching actively after both vegan cosmetics and cruelty-free cosmetics. So something is happening.
Yeah. I see. Exactly. I see that with clean as well. It's not the reason people buy, but it's starting to be part of the thought process, right?
Exactly.
So that's good news. Yeah, that's good news.
Great.
Well, Mette, thank you so much, Mette. That was really fascinating. And
thank you.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just write an email to me, like the email, you can write it maybe under the interview. And just write an email. And since presently I'm located in Europe for the time being until the summer, and they can just reach me on the email, and we can set up a call. So welcome.
Perfect. I'll put all the details there, and you're such a fantastic resource. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali.